So today I just want to touch upon my own experiences and thoughts on how do we make virtual PA planning work for us. And about myself, my name is S.R.V. Subrahmaniam, shortly Subu. I'm an enterprise agile and OKR coach, and I've been an enterprise coach from 2014 onwards. Before that, I spent my life in development and delivery in Siemens. And I've been in SAFE from 2015 onwards. I've led or been part of large transformations in Ford, IT, Edgework, Finacle. So this is recorded as a case study in the SAFE website for its completeness of transformation. BNYM technology, which is Inotics, and RBS. And I've also done a fair bit of short-term consulting for different companies in SAFE and OKR. That's briefly about me. So what we want to cover today is what is the context of big room planning? Because if we understand the context well, then we'll figure out, okay, what is going to be different when we look at it in a virtual way. And touching upon remote facilitation, preparing for the PA planning, getting the event right, and the different learning aids which we can potentially use. So starting with big room planning, right? If we know all of us have been a part of some PA planning or the other. So it comes from a facilitation technique called big room planning. So why do we do big room planning is basically that we have different stakeholders, people coming from different backgrounds, and all of them are trying to work towards a common goal, common objective. And to reach that common goal and common objective, they are trying to figure out what is the best way forward. And that best way forward will have a lot of dependencies between them, interlinkages between them, and to reconcile all those differences, the dependencies, and there'll be multiple trade-offs as well when you're trying to come up with a complex solution, and you try to figure that out. And big room planning has been seen in the facilitation circles as one of a very effective technique. And I've used personally big room planning techniques for OKR facilitation also on the goal setting side. So it's a fairly established technique, and it's been used by ScaledAgile Framework very effectively in a nice 2-day format to really help teams come up with a workable PI plan. Now, having said it, what is needed to get the big room planning right? The essential condition is that we really want to have a, a, a very friendly and an inclusive setup where there's camaraderie between the different team members, that they are able to establish a person-to-person connect, and then they are able to figure out how do we come up with a joint solution together, and then work as one unit towards producing a plan which is agreeable to all. And then at the end of the day, you have a plan which is acceptable to all of us when you get out of the room. So this is where we have this 2-day PA planning. So so to repeat what's the essential condition, it's the person-to-person connect, which is extremely important. So why is this person-to-person connect important, right? So now you have dependencies between two teams in the same train. One is a component team, one is 2-3 others are typical feature teams. So the feature teams have a dependency on the component teams. So when you have a typical what you call waterfall setup or teams which are in early stage of agility, you will typically expect the scrum master to do the facilitation or coordination roles between the different teams. And then so obviously the scrum master becomes the go-to man, or scrum masters become the go-to men for interacting or transacting these dependencies and interlinkages between the teams. But as we mature, we would want to establish a team-to-team, person-to-person connect, that it is not just with the scrum master. So there are people who volunteer, who are eager, who are excited to be part of this process, and then they get into these impromptu discussions. So the question is, it is hard to do it in a face-to-face, in a normal distributed PA planning, or even a face-to-face PA planning. We take at least 1 or 2 or 3 PIs PA planning events to get it right. It's often chaotic on the first time around. So the question is, how is it that we'll be able to figure it out, get it right when we are doing it a virtual mode, right? So this is a key question we would really want to crack. If you are able to crack this equation, then you are essentially you'll be firing on all cylinders, right? So now, uh, even before we get into a purely remote or a purely virtual PA planning where the 120 or 150 participants are all connecting from different devices, let us look at what is it that we see as a typical PA planning meeting. So one is, the best ideal is you have a full ART present in the room, in a big room, and then you have each of the teams having their own areas where you have charts, sticky notes, and a big board for your program board to come up, and common areas where you put your risk sheets and stuff like that. So that's the ideal setup, face to face. If there's a connect, if there's something to discuss, a team member will walk across to the other team area, or get people from different teams to sort out a problem, and then they'll figure out a solution then and there. This is the ideal setup. And now, what mostly we see even in a pre-COVID world is you're split into 2 or 3 different locations, and still there are people connecting remotely. So here one location typically takes a lead, and people, and then there the problem possibly is, how do I get all locations to participate in equal measure? But typically, as we see, that one location which takes the lead often dominates the discussions. So yes, there are problems there, but then this is a case where you have 150, 120 people joining via Zoom or WebEx online, and all of them are connecting virtually, right? So what is the heart of it? It means there are actually uh, the key thing to getting it right is what I see as the remote facilitation. When I say remote facilitation, right? So what is key to getting the PA planning right is the RTE and the Scrum Masters and often the Agile coaches facilitating the event. So what do you mean by facilitation here? Means that the facilitators enable the teams, enable the participants to indulge in, to engage in productive conversations, productive dialogues, that there is a certain meaningful output or outcome coming out at the end of the meeting. So this also means facilitating those discussions, setting up the agenda, and then setting up meaningful forums for engagement, so that by the end of the meeting's time box, right, you have a meaningful outcome coming out of it. So the question is, typically RTEs and agile coaches are trained to be good facilitators. So that's all good, but these guys need to go that extra mile to know, to figure out how do I facilitate it in a remote way with all these tools, right? And then next is, how do I figure out the planning related logistics and the actual event of how to get it right. So just engage figuring out on what does this remote facilitation mean, right? So you have typically conversations happening in a face-to-face mode or over a over digital means, but then this is fundamentally different because we're not talking of facilitating a conversation with few participants. We are talking about 150 people at max, right? You have the arch strength of about 125 people, and then you have stakeholders coming from the management side, or stakeholders coming from upstream or downstream programs attending it to sync up or to facilitate to work out the dependencies coming in. So it's 150 people all joining from their own devices. So this means that I need to reimagine the entire PA planning process using digital tools. So this is where I think, if you ask me, what is the single biggest thing I will do to get the PA planning right, it means that the RTE, right, and or the agile coach, along with a few scrum masters, take up this mantle of, yes, what does it take to digitally facilitate the PA planning? So if they are able to devote time and attention towards getting the answer to this question right, then obviously your PA planning will be a great success, because that is acknowledging that there is a fundamental change in the situation today, and that fundamental change is that, yes, facilitating a remote conversation virtually is a different ball game compared to what we do face to face. Just to give one indication, right? In a face to face conversation, right? In a PA planning or even in a distributed PA planning, typically you can figure out the mood in the room because you can see the energy levels, you can see the facial expressions, you can see the participation, you can see the it's all written on the faces of the people. So the mood permeates the room, so it's easier to figure that out. The question is, how do I do that when I'm in a online setup, right? So first thing is, I think we need to figure out what is the tool equation you want to look at, right? So first thing I would really want you to recommend, want you to go through is, depending on your organization's ecosystem, figure out what is the visual thinking tool you want to use. You have Mural.co or Miro or PIPlanning.io. These tools give you a lot of uh, graphic predefined templates to come up with your sprint plans, your team plans, your PA objectives, or your program board, right? The visual boards. So this is extremely important. And all of these are basically, the free version is pretty much light. You need to go for a paid version. So this is where you guys need to figure out which one you want to attempt, and then get your organization licenses for these, right? So why we are emphasizing on the visual thinking tools is, you'll see it in a graphical format. So as much as you see a program board visually when you do it in a face-to-face setup, the same thing you'll be able to present it uh, graphically with Mural or Miro, and multiple people can be editing it at the same time, right? That's the key point here. And you can also designate predefined team areas for coming up with their team plans, and then coming up with one complete PA objective towards the end of the PA planning meeting. So you can also use tools like idea boards for people to log the risk, categorize the risks, and so on. So this is, I think, the key point I would like to highlight, that figuring out which one you want to use and buying the requisite licenses, or working out which is the license regime you want to use, is extremely important. Then you want to build that camaraderie within the team, right? Without this, what is going to happen is, you might have the best visual collaboration tool like the items here, but then people won't talk, people won't participate. So for that, you need to build that psychological safety, that yes, it is a safe forum to talk. See, if you look at most of us, a lot of us are not born extroverts. We look at the mood in the room, who is in the room, is it safe to talk, and even when, if after we open our mouths, to what extent can we go ahead. A lot of it depends on nudges and facial expressions from our colleagues, right? So that applies to a lot of us. So how do you, so in nothing of that sort is going to be available when you are connecting virtually, right? So then what will the response of the people be? It will be by and large playing it safe by keeping mum. So how do you do that? So this is where what I suggest is, you invest in a tool like Slack or Trello. Slack is primarily, I think, a group communication tool, and Trello is to track a lot of prep activities in a Kanban mode. So you can have this informal conversations and camaraderie being built within the team and across different Scrum teams which are part of the ART. So then what happens is, not just official matters on something which is like puzzles or something interesting which could get the team motivated. It can be games, it can be uh, certain what you call contests, and so on. So then what happens is, people build that, okay, that person to person connect in a digital means. So you are creating that environment of psychological safety, and this has to be done before the PI, and this should now be an ongoing activity, because I think for a lot of time, I think this is how we see things happening, right? And COVID is not going anytime soon. And the third thing which we want to figure out is, there are a lot of ALM tools themselves which offer certain visual capabilities. Like, I know for sure that Riley and version 1 have certain ways to digitally prepare a program board, and also come up with team plans and so on. So figure out what is there in your ALM. And again, especially with tools like Jira, right, there are a lot of add-ons you need to buy, especially, right? So your current enterprise version might not have it. So explore it in the tool, and then figure out whether your own enterprise has those licenses. So this is the key here. and then check out whether your organization would be willing to go there. And then last but not the least, it is the web conferencing tool. And as we saw today, right now in this, right, so there are even the best devices, like I use an Apple MacBook, right? There were certain permissions which had to be given. I had restart GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar. I had restart my PC to do that. So you expect tools to behave roguely many a time, and also figure out what is the tool you're going to use for web conferencing, right? Is it WebEx, is it BlueJeans, or Zoom? And please remember, each of these tools have different licensing models. Like for instance, I was checking out on Zoom for one of my cases, for one of my upcoming events. Your normal enterprise Zoom license is covering 100 attendees. So you need to get an additional license to cover it up to 500. So which means when you are hitting 150, 160, you're not even sure what's the audio quality going to look like. Is the breakout rooms going to work? And so you need to really practice it a few times in your conversations to check out the whether that how the tool behaves under the load and the stress in your own environment. That's extremely important to figure out what is, again, given the size and load of your meeting, what is the tool which is going to be helpful. So not but not the least, we would like to have like Zoom breakout rooms functionality perfectly is compatible with what we want to do in SAFe when we want to do this team breakouts for coming up with their own team meetings, right? And they can come to the central area, discuss with the central team, and then they could again go back to the team breakout rooms. So this is extremely important that you again figure out what is it that you want to achieve in your web conference with what kind of a tool. And then equally important is how do I share my document and content. There should be a typical shared area. So, and then you can do it in Confluence or you can do it in your company's wiki. But what is most important is you need to clearly figure it, publish, try, experiment, and agree within your team, publish that tool ecosystem, what you're going to do and what is going to be used for what, and with all the necessary links, so that you have it, all the team members have it handy, and all the team members are also comfortable using it prior to starting the PI planning. Yeah. So as I've been telling, visualize the tool ecosystem, and please also remember, all of us, because of the work from home, and we are all surrounded by gadgets today, right? From houses which have one or two gadgets, we've jumped to using 6 or 7 gadgets, depending on how many people are attending school or taking up office engagements from the house. So we are all having what we call as a tool fatigue, right? At least including me. So figure out what is that minimum tool ecosystem which you want to use, so that people are not shuffling between too many tools and losing track, right? And then look at it from an organizational readiness in terms of licenses, in terms of tool configuration, and in terms of security. Like especially with Zoom, we've had so many complaints regarding security, right? And then third point is we need a good, as with any change management setup, we need a good setup where we have the different change agents within the system who are trying to propagate the new way of working. So that will be the facilitator group, not just the RT, but group of Scrum Masters and another enthusiastic group, typically you can say about 8 to 9 people. So these guys will come together, understand the tool, get trained on the tool, and figure out how do we use each of these tools at what configuration, uh, for which purpose. So they'll get this tool equation right, and in doing that, they are also getting mastery of the tool, so that tomorrow they are expert expert remote facilitators, and then that they help get the PI planning right. So this is extremely important, because at the end of the day, when you are trying to experiment a new setup, it is always about people. Tools comes next. So the moment people are enthusiastic about it, they'll figure out the best way to handle the tool, and they'll also be the change agents propagating this new way of working within the organization. And train and get comfortable, do dry runs beforehand, right? So These dry runs can be 15 or 20-minute meetings even, but then they'll really flag what can be the potential bottlenecks, what is the areas where we want the tool configuration right, or where are people feeling uncomfortable. So again, it is building that digital comfort for the entire group, and digital comfort along with that kind of that psychological safety, that people are already interacting with each other, conversing with each other in groups like Slack or in Trello. Then that means that yes, we are creating that right ecosystem for a person to person connect before the PIPlanning meeting. So what do we need to prepare for online conversations? As I said, help build the digital identity of the teams, foster conversations across teams, publish the team directory so that people know who is who, where, so that they can quickly connect, and have fun sessions and exercises to promote camaraderie, and check the network connectivity. Right, a lot of people might be connecting from areas where there's no broadband and connecting via mobile 4G, and network strength may not be good enough. Figure it out so that in each team, if you can figure out who has difficulty connecting, then those are the weak links, and you could at least uh, figure a way out of how to handle it. And then third most important thing is, as with anything in Agile, we want to get the working agreements right. So working agreements means, for instance, uh, uh, you have this concept of team breakouts in the PIPlanning. Now the question is, how do you really interact with another team when you are in a team breakout? At least Zoom doesn't allow you to jump from one breakout room to another breakout room straight away, right? So what is going to be the working agreement? How do we handle it? Teams have to figure that out, right? And the central team's presence may be needed in one or many of the breakout rooms, right? Central team, it means the systems architect, people from the system team who manage the environments, maintain the CI/CD setup, or it can be those guys who are coming from the security, performance engineering, lean user experience. So that kind of a group. So they are going to be needed for different team breakouts at different points in time. So we need a working agreement. Possibly one idea I could think is that we could use a separate Slack channel to handle the availability and presence of this central team. And you could also have what is it? People having separate people using a separate Slack channel in terms of a hashtag for these specific dependency related discussions. So this is where the tool ecosystem and the accepted practices really are key, and then these need to be publicized beforehand. So the more we do it before the actual PIPlanning meeting, greater is the likelihood of success, right? And as I've said, a facilitator is only as powerful as a tool. Figure out the security concerns, licenses, and configuration and setup, and get specialist training and have support on hand during the PIPlanning, be it for Zoom, WebEx, or BlueJeans, because you never know when there's going to be a performance bottleneck, when a configuration is going to fail you. So please be aware that it's not just time of one or two individuals. It's the collective time of 120, 130 people that is involved here, that we need to be doubly cautious. So now we are coming to the actual agenda, right? So if we go to the normal agenda, right? Let us just have a look at it. So this is the 2-day agenda. So we have this business context being presented by the leaders, and the product and solution vision listing out the priority of the features, and you have the architecture and development practices coming in the system architect, team breakouts, draft plan reviews, again team breakouts with after adjustments, and risk review, and so on. So this is a 2-day agenda which works well when you are doing it face to face. So even when you're doing it in a distributed way, especially across continents, right? Depending on your overlap hours, it might stretch into 3 or 4 or even 5 days. Like if you're doing between India and west coast of US, it typically stretches across 5 days, given that overlap hours is only 3 or 4 hours, right? So if this is the case, how do you want to do it in a virtual context? One thing I will strongly recommend is that after each presentation, we need to give 15 minutes for Q&A. So which means there is somebody moderating the Q&A discussions. Basically, there's a chat window where the participants can post questions, and then the moderator is going to take those questions and then get the presenter address those questions. So we need to give that kind of a time after each session, so that we are encouraging the participation. And please remember, when you are sitting alone, it's quite possible that you are unable to relate to the big picture. So even when you are in a team context, given the way we are all tutored to work, there's always a focus on just focusing on our team specific activities and not relating to the big picture. So the whole success of SAFE is when we are able to relate to the big picture, and that is where it's very important that we are engaging participation, and we encourage questions and answers after each session. So this becomes extremely important, especially for the business context, product and solution vision, and the architecture vision, right? So this is one thing I wanted to specifically point out. And then during the team breakouts, you might want to have specific time window of say 1 hour where people can discuss dependencies, right? So they could pick up, they could really have conversations moderated in Slack, and then they could figure out in which breakout room which teams would like to meet, so that they have specific dependency discussions. Again, after the team breakouts, or during the team breakouts, you need to specifically set up a time for any dependency related discussion and give it ample time, because moving from one breakout room to another breakout room and getting multiple team members or members from multiple teams into one breakout room is not going to be very easy or convenient. So all those things need practice, and figure that out, that you need more time. That's the big message I want to give you. This schedule is not going to work, so it might stretch 4-5 days possibly, right? Yeah, if you're looking at a 16-hour typical PA planning meeting, we're talking of at least 20-30% more time would be my guess for getting it right virtually, right? And of course, after each draft plan review, again we need to have that Q&A session, so that people are able to follow it and get the questions answered. So one of the key elements of the working agreement I would like to point out is it's very difficult to moderate a verbal discussion, given that multiple people might want to talk at the same time. So again, as a team, we need to figure out what's a working agreement we want to have, so that when you start your conversation, you're not stopping somebody from expressing his view, or we don't let one or two people dominate those conversations. So that is about team breakouts and having that sessions for Q&A across all the stuff. And for program risks and confidence vote and stuff like that, you can use these online polling tools or ideaboards.com, where it's easier to post your views on a sticky note kind of a setup in idea boards, and then you could also have it voted, and you could also put it across the 4 risk categories of risks. Accept, roam, right? Owned, accepted, mitigated, and resolved. And you also have all those digital tools for planning the retrospective. So first is, yes, split it over 3 days, provide time for offline collaboration, Q&A, and the different discussions. And this is, and then the participation of during the Q&A will give you a feedback of how people are engaging during the PA planning meeting. So there's less engagement, obviously you'll have less number of questions, right? And the nature of the questions will also tell you to what extent is the team members assimilating. So that provides you with ample feedback on the way PA planning is progressing, so that you can replan if needed, right? And focus on dependency management, provide time outside of breakout sessions if needed, because this is the key to getting your PA planning right. So please give adequate time for that. Right. So to sum it up, we're talking about art, team familiarity, camaraderie, rapport, and their digital comfort. Then tool ecosystem setup with guidance, and have a plan B ready, and have a slack and or buffer in the schedule, so that if there is a disruption, you are able to safely handle it. And you are also blocking the time so that people are aware that yes, there may be disturbances anticipated. So this is to get the PA plan. This is the prior to the PA planning. And during the PA planning, as I said, getting that facilitator ecosystem is key. So people who are well versed with the tools and also can look for feedback on or signs for engagement or visual collaboration, and teams working together uh, and tracking the activity in online channels, so that they are able to get a feedback, right? What uh, in a face-to-face conversation we'll be able to pick up from the mood or the facial expression or by the participation, we should be able to pick up those same cues from the digital channels and tools. So that will tell us, are we making progress or are we not making progress, and then we can initiate certain corrective actions. And please reinforce the team alignment towards the big picture, because even in as I was mentioning earlier, even in a ideal case, right, people are still focused on their own, what that their own teams do, rather than again aligning to the big picture in terms of dependencies or tool or technical guidance coming from the art central team, or what are the release objectives. So please reinforce the central objective, the big picture in terms of what we want to accomplish, what's the outcome we are trying to accomplish, right? So one thing I would like to emphasize from uh, Agile Manifesto is that we would like to focus on the people and the interactions over processes and tools. So what we look for is outcome, right? Tools are only facilitating, enabling that. So please remember that, and publish the channels and tool links upfront, so that you are able to monitor the activity and also track them in the breakout rooms. So a key to keeping the team engaged is introduce an element of fun, right? Look for different ways. Like I've seen teams do interesting video backgrounds in Zoom, right? So you have an excellent um, library of pictures, right? So you can have a contest around video backgrounds, or people coming up with makeup and costumes, or people, especially in the West, they have pets, so you can just showcase, each showcasing their pets or the kids, right? Kids in special costumes. Or I've seen people play music or any special skills which they have. So these type of activities build the team camaraderie and rapport, and creates that net of psychological safety. So there are puzzles which you can play online. So, or you can even Google for those exciting exercises for teams working on virtually. So this is important to keep the interest alive. Otherwise, for all you may know, the meeting might be going on, but except for a few others may be digitally present but mentally absent. So you might get your PA planning completed, but probably the essence of it is lost. So net on net, before I close, it is about that, yes, first time it is going to be chaotic. Please have a learning mindset, and then look out for, and as I said, have a plan B and have some buffer in the system in terms of time, and be cautious in terms of it's okay to spend more time in the pre-planning, trying to bring in alignment, trying to get the working agreements right, trying to get trained on the tools, get the tool configuration right. Extra effort is always beneficial, but what is more important is that you put in your best, and of course there'll be new problems coming up, but have technical help handy. That's very important, so that even if there's something, you have plan B or technical help to write it through. And I'm sure, I think we're all good learners in an agile world. We inspect and adapt as well big time, so you should be able to figure out what could potentially work, and then correct and move on. So this is what I wanted to share. So one of the things I would strongly recommend is there's a remote facilitation guide available on the Mural site, so you can access it here. which I personally benefited from. Yeah, so you have this remote facilitation guide, so you can go through it, and that provides a lot of guidance on the principles of remote facilitation per se, which quite a bit of it I've actually shared it in this particular presentation as well, right? So a lot of this visual tools help you in prioritizing it, prioritization, customer journey maps, user journey maps, for your product roadmaps, for your program board, etc. And even before, let me also tell, of course, you have the likes of Mural and Miro, but even otherwise, I've used a lot of these Excel sheets templates, right? To really Excel sheets or even normal PowerPoints, uh, to really come up with the program board or the team level presentations, even 4 5 years back, right? So even you can just be smart enough in Excel to figure that out. Yeah, so a lot of it is dependent on your own intent to experiment, willingness to experiment, and then the organizational context in terms of the willingness to pay for the licenses, and then in large corporations you also have certain central policies in terms of how do you onboard tools, right? So that organizational ecosystem willingness and readiness is going to have an impact. So be smart enough and provide time, invest time. So that's not going to be simple. So at least 3 weeks preparation is needed for you to get everything ready before your PA planning to go on in a virtual mode. And all the facilitators need to don the digital hat for you to do that.